David sat at his desk, observing the unfolding scene. The glass-walled modern office throbbed with energy. He watched Sarah, his wife, encircled by applauding colleagues. Her radiant smile illuminated the room. Her promotion seemed almost magical. "You deserve this, love," a colleague exclaimed, clapping. David managed a smile, but internally a storm brewed as Sarah ascended the makeshift stage to accept her award. A tightness constricted David's chest. He'd toiled relentlessly, often exhausting himself on projects, yet the promotion he craved eluded him. "It's just a matter of time," he'd repeatedly told himself. But witnessing Sarah's praise from Mark, the charismatic, and his superior, planted seeds of doubt. After the ceremony, as people dispersed, David approached Sarah. She glowed, her eyes sparkling with triumph. "Congratulations, love. I'm so proud of you," David said, striving for a steady tone. "Thank you, honey. I couldn't have done it without you. You've always been there," Sarah replied, softly kissing him. Yet, a nagging feeling persisted. Something beyond merit fueled her assent. In the following days, whispers snaked through the office corridors. Casual conversations revealed rumors of Mark's favoritism towards Sarah. "She's Mark's favorite now. I bet he has his eye on her," one employee joked. David initially dismissed it, but the laughter felt heavy, settling in his stomach. He refused to believe Sarah's rapid advancement stemmed from anything unsavory. One evening, while Sarah was in the bathroom, David, distracted, hesitantly unlocked his phone. Trust, he reminded himself, underlay their relationship, but curiosity overpowered him. He found text messages that sent his heart racing, intimate exchanges between Sarah and Mark, filled with compliments and a closeness he'd never witnessed. "You're amazing. I don't know how the company would function without you," one message read. David's blood ran cold. He replaced the phone, his mind reeling. "It can't be," he whispered, as the puzzle pieces began to fit together, forming a terrifying picture. He rose from bed, feeling the floor vanish beneath him. The thought of his wife's affair with his boss was unbearable. Distrust surged like a tidal wave. He needed the truth, but how? He sat in the living room, the computer screen's glow reflecting on his face as he stared at the blank screen. Revenge pulsed, but he needed irrefutable proof. "If that's true, I can't remain idle," he muttered, resolute. With a heavy heart and racing mind, David decided he could no longer ignore the signs. Investigation was necessary, even if it meant traversing a painful path. "I'll uncover what's happening," he vowed, the echoes of Sarah's promotion celebrations ringing like a constant reminder of broken trust. The night stretched on, the shadow of distrust settling, promising an impending storm. David walked the bustling city streets, his mind buzzing with unshakable thoughts and questions. Sarah's radiant smile at her promotion felt more like triumph than celebration. He felt stagnant, trapped in an endless routine. Colleagues' conversations about Sarah's closeness to Mark echoed, but he struggled to believe his wife's involvement in such a cynical power play. Returning home, David sought understanding. He didn't want to be a jealous husband, but distrust grew like a shadow. He began observing Sarah, noting subtle behavioral shifts. She seemed more exhilarated lately, and it wasn't just the promotion. A new energy emanated from her. Whenever Mark was near, a peculiar sparkle ignited in Sarah's eyes. At a company event, David saw his wife and Mark animatedly conversing in a corner. Their palpable chemistry unsettled him. He attempted distraction with colleagues, but his gaze kept returning to that scene. "Look how she laughs," a friend murmured. "They're in another world." David forced a smile, but internally, his mind whirled. He felt like an outsider, unable to decipher their dynamic. After the event, the tension at home was unbearable. David craved concrete proof. He investigated, scrutinizing Sarah's phone whenever possible. One night while she showered, he examined her messages. His heart sank upon finding a dinner receipt from an expensive restaurant on a Thursday, a date he'd been at a work meeting and hadn't seen her. "What was that, Sarah?" he whispered, anger and pain mixing in his chest. "David, are you all right?" Sarah asked, entering, a towel wrapped around her. He quickly hid his phone, concealing his unease. "Just thinking about work," he replied, his voice strained. She smiled, concern flickering in her eyes. He didn't want to worry her, but distrust gnawed at his sanity. Days passed. Each encounter between Sarah and Mark became harder to ignore. He saw them at lunch, laughing at Mark's jokes. Anger grew, but he maintained a calm facade. He confided in a friend, seeking support. "Man, you're letting paranoia consume you. Maybe it's just friendship," the friend suggested. But David couldn't believe it. Things weren't that simple. One stormy night, David decided he could no longer endure the uncertainty. He needed to confront the truth. But how, without letting pain overwhelm him? Losing Sarah terrified him, but the possibility of her betrayal enraged him. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for what lay ahead, knowing the investigation wouldn't just be a quest for answers, but a journey that could alter everything. "I need to know the truth," he muttered, gazing out the rain-lashed window, the city lights reflecting the turmoil within. Each day, the line between love and betrayal blurred, and David knew he'd soon choose between his lingering love for Sarah and the betrayal about to shatter his life. David sat at his desk, staring at the computer screen, his thoughts elsewhere. He couldn't escape the messages found on Sarah's phone. The words exchanged with Mark were a poison, slowly consuming him. He took a deep breath, realizing he needed help. He remembered Lucas, a longtime friend and private investigator. That night, David called. His urgency permeated his voice. "Lucas, I need your help. It's about Sarah. I think she's having an affair with Mark," he stammered. "Calm down, David. Let's proceed methodically." "What's wrong?" Lucas asked, his voice firm and reassuring. David quickly explained everything, from Sarah's promotion to the messages. "I need proof, Lucas. Something showing I'm not just paranoid." "Leave it to me," Lucas replied. "I'll install a tracking app on her phone. We'll see their exchanges." The following days, David felt like an observer in his own life. He was vigilant, monitoring Sarah's every move, careful not to reveal the storm brewing inside. When Lucas finally contacted him, his heart sank. "David, we have a problem," Lucas said, his voice grave. "The messages between Sarah and Mark are very intimate. They're meeting secretly. You need to see this." David felt the ground disappear beneath him. He didn't want to believe it, but confirmation of his suspicions felt like a gut punch. "And now what do I do?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You need to confront her, but think carefully. Don't let anger control you," Lucas advised. Night fell, mirroring the internal storm David faced. The rain cascaded, lightning illuminating the sky, reflecting his turmoil. At home, his mind raced. He wondered if he possessed the courage to confront Sarah. His love for her remained strong, and the thought of her vulnerability made him hesitate. When Sarah arrived, drenched, her smile brightened the room, even in the inclement weather. "Hey, love, you won't believe what happened at work," she exclaimed, removing her wet coat. David watched her, noting her happiness, as if nothing was amiss. For a moment, his resolve wavered. He wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that the messages held a different context. "Sarah, can we talk?" he said, striving for calmness, his heart pounding. "Sure, what's up?" Sarah asked, sensing the gravity in his tone. The external storm mirrored his internal conflict. David hesitated, gazing into her eyes, sparkling with an innocence he knew was false. I found some messages on your phone. Messages between you and Mark." Sarah's smile vanished, replaced by confusion and fear. "What are you saying, David? I know about the meetings, about what you're doing," he stated, his voice firm, yet pain lacing every word. "No, you don't understand. This isn't what it seems," Sarah pleaded, her voice cracking with panic. "Mark's just a friend, I swear." David wanted to believe her, but the evidence was undeniable, as clear as the rain against the windows. "Explain it to me, Sarah. What's happening? Why didn't you tell me?" Her vulnerability hit him hard. He was torn between wanting the truth and the impulse for revenge. The storm raged outside, but heavy silence hung in the air as he awaited the answer that could change everything. David sat at his desk, his mind far from the computer screen. He'd spent days organizing his thoughts, piecing together the puzzle that tormented him. Sarah's affair with Mark wasn't mere infidelity. It was a calculated maneuver, and he was determined to expose it. With his detective friend's help, he'd gathered enough evidence for his desired revenge. That morning, he mentally rehearsed his plan. The company meeting was at 2 p.m., the perfect time to strike. "David, are you sure about this?" Lucas asked, adjusting the hidden camera he'd fitted into a small device. Lucas's expression was a blend of concern and support. "This could end badly." "I have no choice, Lucas. They need to know the truth. And I need to do this," David replied, his voice thick with determination. He knew exposing Sarah and Mark was risky, but he no longer cared about the consequences. The pain of betrayal had morphed into a driving anger. Entering the meeting room, David felt the weight of curious stares. He positioned himself before the projection screen, his heart pounding. Sarah sat to his left, beaming, but her smile seemed forced. Mark, to his right, displayed his usual confident charisma. A mask, David now realized. "Good afternoon, everyone," David began, striving for steadiness. "Today, I present information crucial to our team's future." The words emerged haltingly, but he pressed on. With a gesture, he activated the prepared video. The room fell silent, the air freezing. The images showed Sarah and Mark at a romantic dinner. Shared laughter, subtle touches, meaningful glances. The video's clamor echoed in the room, tension rising. He looked at Sarah. She was pale, eyes wide with shock. "This is absurd," Mark exclaimed, attempting to interrupt. "David, you can't do this." "Not only can I am," David replied, his voice stronger than expected. "You two enjoyed yourselves while I worked hard, believing I had a future with you." The words erupted with a ferocity he didn't know he possessed. He felt in control, yet devastated. The room was deathly silent, all eyes on Sarah, unable to mask her shame. David saw tears welling, but there was no room for compassion. "This is what happens when you play with others' feelings," he continued, his voice lower, but charged with emotion. "And I'm exposing this to everyone." "David, please," Sarah begged, her voice trembling. "That's not who you are. Think about our life together." Her plea reached him, but anger consumed him. He couldn't think clearly. "I am thinking, Sarah, and the truth is, you destroyed everything," David said, his voice a pained whisper. He turned to the audience, observing their reactions, perplexed faces, some shocked, others compassionate. He felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The truth was revealed, but at what cost? The meeting descended into chaos. Voices rose, some murmured, others looked at David with disappointment. He felt caught in a hurricane, the emotional storm washing everything away. The victory he'd envisioned wasn't so sweet. As Sarah and Mark defended themselves, David realized the line between justice and revenge was thinner than he'd thought. He walked away from the table, feeling like a stranger in his own body. The room buzzed, but his mind whirled. The truth was out, but the weight of betrayal remained. He realized fleeting satisfaction couldn't erase his pain. Looking at Sarah, he knew their life would never be the same. The meeting room was tense. The walls, usually adorned with company achievements, now witnessed unfolding drama. Sarah stood, pale and wide-eyed, while David stared with newfound determination. The video echoed in his colleagues' minds. The growing murmur became a wave of disbelief. "David, I can't believe you did this," Sarah finally managed, her shaky voice reflecting anger and despair. "That's not how you resolve things," David retorted, his tone heavy with irony. "Don't you think it's time to face the truth, Sarah? You and Mark played with everyone's feelings, and don't forget, you were willing to sacrifice our lives." Mark, who tried maintaining control, was cornered. "David, this isn't what you think. I'm her boss. The dynamics are complicated. You can't just..." He hesitated, realizing his words held no weight. The room was filled with accusatory stares. Pressure suffocated him. Complicated? Or are you just trying to save yourself? David intervened, his gaze piercing. You should have considered the consequences. You used your power to manipulate and destroy. Mark, it's time to pay. Mark's expression shifted from disdain to despair. You can't do this. I have friends in senior management. This won't stand. But David wouldn't be intimidated. Adrenaline surged. He finally felt in control. Of course I can, David replied, his confidence growing. What you don't realize is your power no longer protects you. You're surrounded, and everyone here knows what you did. Mentioning the company's name heightened the tension. The murmur intensified. Colleagues pulled out their phones, recording this pivotal moment. Sarah, desperate, approached David. Please, you need to listen. I made a mistake, but I'm not the only one at fault. You can't just destroy our lives like this. And you think I'll feel sorry for you? David snapped, his gaze hardening. You betrayed me, Sarah. You destroyed everything we built. Now, I'm doing what's right. She turned to her colleagues, seeking support, but met only disapproval. Shame washed over her. Her confident expression faded. I didn't want this. I thought I could handle it differently. And now you see the consequences of your choices, David said, devoid of compassion. Dismissal is just the beginning. You and Mark will answer for this. Mark, realizing his game was over, tried a final gambit. David, you can't do this. You have no concrete evidence about what happened between us. It's just an accusation. Evidence? David raised an eyebrow. Do you really think this will save you? Your reputation is at stake, and I'm just beginning to expose your manipulative practices. David's words were sharp knives, cutting through Mark's illusion of control. As tensions rose, David realized the revenge he craved wasn't bringing the relief he'd imagined. The pain of betrayal still throbbed, and the realization that there were no winners hit him hard. You'll never understand, Sarah said, her voice low and full of pain. I just wanted to be recognized, David. You know how difficult it is in this world. David took a deep breath, feeling the internal battle between revenge and sadness at the loss of his former life. Difficult? I thought we were a team, but you chose the wrong side. As murmurs and curious glances filled the room, David understood the true battle wasn't with Sarah or Mark, but with the pain of betrayal shaping his life. He didn't know what the future held, but his only certainty was that everything had changed forever. The sun set, casting a golden glow over the city. David watched from his new office window, on the company's top floor, an achievement seemingly distant months ago. He'd become head of the department, a role bringing respect and recognition, but also a weighty responsibility that made him question his choices. Reflecting, he couldn't escape the memory of Sarah's betrayal. A light knock interrupted his introspection. It was Clara, his new assistant, radiating positive energy, easing his burden since day one. David, do you have a few minutes? We need to discuss the board presentation, she said with an encouraging smile. Of course, Clara. Come in, David replied, hiding his lingering melancholy. As Clara explained her ideas, he felt increasingly comfortable. She respected his leadership and brought freshness to the work environment. Do you really believe we can impact the board's vision with these proposals? He asked, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Without a doubt. I believe we can show them we're ready for new directions, Clara responded, her confidence infectious. David smiled genuinely for the first time in months. However, his tranquility was about to shatter. During a board meeting, David received a warning. Sarah had attempted to sabotage his position. An anonymous email warned of manipulated information that could lead to his dismissal. The anger and betrayal he thought he'd overcome resurfaced with vengeance. He needed to act swiftly. Clara, can you make copies of all emails involving my promotion? I need to ensure everything's documented, he asked, his voice firm. Of course, David. What's going on? She questioned, noticing the change in his tone. It's something I have to face. Sarah, she's not happy with what happened, and it feels like she's trying to bring me down again, he replied, feeling a knot in his stomach. I can't let this go. However, his tranquility was about to shatter. During a board meeting, David received a warning. Sarah had attempted to sabotage his position. An anonymous email warned of manipulated information that could lead to his dismissal. The anger and betrayal he thought he'd overcome resurfaced with vengeance. He needed to act swiftly. "Clara, can you make copies of all emails involving my promotion? I need to ensure everything's documented," he asked, his voice firm. "Of course, David. What's going on?" she questioned, noticing the change in his tone. "It's something I have to face. Sarah, she's not happy with what happened, and it feels like she's trying to bring me down again," he replied, feeling a knot in his stomach. "I can't let this go." David decided to confront the situation directly. At an extraordinary board meeting, he stood, determination coursing through his veins. "Gentlemen, I'd like to address some issues regarding my promotion. There's been an attempted sabotage that needs to be addressed," he began, meeting each board member's gaze. A murmur rippled through the room. Tension was palpable. He continued, "I've received information that Sarah is attempting to manipulate data, creating a scenario for my dismissal. This isn't just about honor, but integrity." David's heart raced, but he remained steady. The initially skeptical board began to pay attention. "If I may, I'd like to present emails and documents proving this manipulation," he continued, opening his laptop. The presentation was compelling. Clara, at his side, watched in admiration. David exposed not only the sabotage attempts, but also the truth about Sarah and Mark's betrayal, proving he wouldn't be consumed by the past. After the meeting, the board discussed Sarah's actions. David felt a weight lift. He'd faced his demons and reaffirmed himself as a strong, ethical leader. Later, leaving the building with Clara, she said, "You were amazing in there, David. I'm proud of you." He smiled, feeling ready to move on. "Thank you, Clara. I really appreciate your support." That night, overlooking the city, David realized true victory wasn't revenge on Sarah or Mark, but maintaining his integrity. He learned that hate and betrayal didn't define his life. Instead, he was building a promising future, surrounded by those who cared. The love and peace he felt were the true rewards for his resilience.